I never thought I'd see Earth fire. First, we were always the underdogs, always the ones crawling to catch up to the galactic powers, always behind in tech, behind in diplomacy, behind in everything, until they made one mistake, one brutal mistake that woke something in us no one could put back to sleep. They bombed a civilian colony on Europa. 22,000 dead. No warning, no negotiation, just vaporized. And I lost my brother there. His name was Miles. He was just a transport engineer, built cargo drones, fixed guidance systems. The kind of guy who never picked a fight in his life. When the news came in, fragments of human bodies floating above the ice, the comms tower still burning in atmosphere. I didn't cry, I didn't scream, I just sat there, hand gripping the dog tags he gave me years ago, and felt something cold start to settle in my chest. And I wasn't alone. Across Earth, across Luna, Mars, in the belt, every human knew what this was. Not a mistake, not crossfire. It was a message from the J-Tau Dominion, a warning, stay in your place. Earth. We heard it loud and clear. Then we answered. I was a major in the Terran response division when the retaliation order came down. No red tape, no UN vote, no Galactic Council hearing, just a single line of command from high command. Initiate Operation Ashfall, no survivors. We weren't just going to retaliate, we were going to humiliate them, break them, and make damn sure no alien power ever thought of touching Earth again. Our target, J-Tal High Nest, their political and religious capital. We didn't go in with flashy diplomacy. Ships. We dropped shock pods from orbit, each carrying death and steel and fire. I led one of those pods. Inside that cramped coffin, surrounded by my unit, grizzled Marines, ex-convict pilots, cybernetic assassins. We didn't pray. We didn't speak. We gritted our teeth and checked our gear. Because when those pod doors opened, it wouldn't be war, it would be slaughter. We landed hard, straight into the main plaza of the nest. Their architecture was pristine. Crystal towers, floating platforms, ornate biomtal sculptures. Beautiful shore. But all I saw was a target-rich environment. My boots hit the ground, my rifle lit up, and I started painting the J-Hat till skyline with explosions. They never expected Earth to hit back like this. They thought we'd beg, protest, crawl to the council for justice. But Earth was done playing the obedient species. This wasn't a battle. This was vengeance sharpened into bullets. They fought back with energy. Whips, mind-burst tech drones. But we didn't care. We pushed forward street by street, killing everything that moved. And then we found the palace, the heart of their empire. It wasn't enough to destroy it. We had to make it unforgettable. I climbed their sacred tower. 12 stories of gold alloy and ancient artifacts, and set charges along its spine. As I planted the last one, I looked out. Over the nest, the fires, the fleeing civilians, the broken soldiers. My heart didn't skip, my stomach didn't turn. They had turned us into monsters. And now they had to see what kind of monster they'd made. I hit detonate. The tower collapsed in front of the entire galaxy. Broadcast. Live by Earth's hacked relay drones. Holy site turned to rubble in seconds. And when the dust settled, I stood at the center of it all, looking right into the council's orbital cameras. I said nothing. Just raised my rifle to the sky and dropped it. Message delivered. And the council. For once, they were silent. When I got back to the dropship, my hands were still shaking. Not from fear. I'd lost that back on Mars during the Sithai's rebellion. This was something else. Something quieter. The kind of trembling you get when your soul doesn't quite know what it's done. Yet, my armor was scorched, soaked in alien blood and caked in dust. But the worst part was the silence. Even the Marines didn't say a damn word. Usually after a hit like this, you'd hear grunts, muttering, trading stories, laughing dark jokes, lighting smokes. Like war was just another shift. Not now. Not this time. We had all seen the nest go down. Watched the civilization's holy center crumble in fire and fury. We didn't feel proud, we felt dangerous. High Command called it a strategic success. That was their word, strategic. I guess it sounds cleaner than genocide. But we knew what we did. We didn't just strike back, we didn't hit a military base or take out command nodes, we erased a symbol. A species like the Jathal doesn't recover from that. Not culturally, not politically. That tower wasn't just a government HQ. It was their God's voice, their sacred origin. And now it was ash broadcast in high def to every sector within range. We made sure of that. And the council. Still. And NBSP. Silent. That told us everything. They didn't rush to condemn us. Didn't send envoys or diplomatic pressure. Hell, they didn't even issue a statement. Because deep down they knew what this was. Earth had always been the underdog, the wild card, the species with too much emotion and too little control. Now they realized we weren't wild, we were angry. And that terrified them more than any weapon we ever built. Back on Luna Command, I sat through 4 debriefs in 5 hours. Every one of them was colder than they last. No faces, just AI transcribers. Static line brass hiding behind screens. Sanitized voices asking the same question over and over. Did you follow the rules of engagement? I almost laughed. Rules? There were no rules after Europa. After you kill 22,000 civilians and don't even bother denying it, you lose the right to cry about retaliation. Still I answered, I told them everything, who I shot, where the charges were placed, who gave the green light. It was all on record anyway, nothing to hide. We weren't criminals, we were the last line between survival and extinction, and they knew it. But here's the thing nobody said aloud. The thing that made those officials shift in their seats and mute their screens a little faster every time I spoke. They weren't afraid of the Jado. They were afraid of us. 3 days later, I met with General Adric. Real name, real face. That alone told me something was off. The man looked like a carved brick, skin like old leather. Cybernetic eye glowing faintly, the kind of bastard who didn't blink during orbital strikes. He poured 2 glasses of that synthetic bourbon the Martian colonies were so proud of and slid one across the table. You did good, son. More than good. I didn't answer. Just sipped the drink and waited. He leaned back, eyes fixed on me. You know what you've done, don't you? I nodded. Send a message. No. You changed the game. He wasn't wrong. Because retaliation wasn't the end. It was only the beginning, the J-tile. didn't respond publicly. Their home world broadcast state. Morning. Their diplomatic corps went dark. Their fleet scattered. Some pulled back, some stayed in place. Some simply disappeared. But the intel started flooding in. Minor races in the Dominion were pulling out, civil unrest, riots on satellite, colonies, religious factions, splintering. We hadn't just crushed their capital. We detonated the very idea of J-tile supremacy. And suddenly, the Galactic Council, the smug, slow-moving, centuries-old puppet show of self-important, advanced species, realized they had a human problem. Not a military one, a cultural one. Because humans weren't just unpredictable anymore. We were willing to lose the moral high ground, willing to play dirty, willing to turn our grief into pure surgical violence. They didn't know how to deal with that. It didn't take long before Earth became the center of something darker. Colonies on the fringe started sending in requests for Terran protection. Minor species, ones the Council had ignored for decades, suddenly looked to Earth not as a rogue state, but as a shield, the kind of shield that bleeds, that bites back, that doesn't wait for permission to retaliate. I was sent to Praxis IV to deal with a small rebellion. Or that's what they told me. In truth, it was a test. They wanted to see how far we'd go, how deep Earth's brutality really ran, whether that rage was a one-time eruption or something sustainable. And I failed that test in all the right ways. Praxis IV was a council-aligned world, mostly trade ports and cultural hubs. One of their species, can't pronounce their name, I just called them lobes, had a regional governance dispute. A splinter group bombed a council vessel and took credit. Naturally, they blamed Earth for inspiring violence. So they asked me to stabilize the region. What they really meant was kill the rebels and show everyone Earth doesn't protect terrorists. Fine. But I didn't play it their way. I tracked down the splinter cell, took out their leader with a surgical strike, clean, precise. No civilian casualties. I even left one of their temples standing against orders because I knew what they were trying to bait me into. They wanted me to level it all, go full brutality again. Give the Council a reason to label Earth as unhinged. But Earth wasn't unhinged, we were evolving. General Edric called me 2 days later. Why didn't you wipe out the district? I sipped my drink. Because it wasn't about the mission. Explain. I've already shown them what we can do. Now I want them to fear what we might do. He was silent for a long time. Then, you just bought Earth more power than 1,000 ships ever could. But power comes with a price. The Council began negotiations quietly. Behind closed doors, no press, no AI. Transcripts, they offered concessions. Trade routes, tech sharing, even a permanent Earth seat on the outer ring. We said no. Earth didn't want a seat at the table. We wanted to flip the table. And while diplomats talked and ambassadors smiled, we started building something darker under Luna's surface. A fleet not like before. Not clunky, outdated Terran destroyers. These were ghost ships, no identification, no nation tags, designed to operate outside the Geneva rework. Accord, invisible in Council space. Untraceable, disposable, the unofficial. Name the burn fleet, and I was chosen. To lead it, some men build empires. Others burn them down. I was never meant to be a hero. I wasn't bred for diplomacy or decorated. For medals, I was a soldier, a killer. The kind you put in a black ship when you don't want to be polite anymore. We didn't wear flags, we didn't ask questions. Our orders were simple. If Earth is touched again, make sure they feel it forever. The burn fleet operated in silence, orbiting the outer dark, running simulations, targeting possible council weak spots. We knew where every fuel line crossed, where every AI relay station powered through. If war came again, we wouldn't send troops. We'd shut the galaxy off one star at a time. That's the power Earth had now. Not just force. Fear. 1 year after Europa, I visited the site. They never rebuilt it, they couldn't. The ice still shimmered with the residue of plasma burns. Some of the old debris floated lazily, untouched. Memorial flags whipped in the wind, planted by families who had nothing else to bury. I stood there for a long time, alone. No armor, no rifle. Just me and the ghost of a brother I'd never get back. Miles would have hated what I became, but he'd understand why I did it. Because the galaxy didn't give us peace. It gave us pain, and we learned how to weaponize it. The council remained silent, no sanctions, no threats, no declarations, just fear. That's what Earth became. Not a member of the Galactic Order, but its reckoning. Power changes things. Not in the way people fantasize, with cheers and parades and some noble rise to greatness. That's the story they sell in recruitment posters. The real change, it's quieter, it creeps into rooms where trust used to live. It poisons chain of command. It makes every handshake feel like it hides a blade. And Earth had never held this much power before. We weren't built for it. We were built from war, scarcity, and loss. Give a species like ours too much authority, and we don't become rulers. We become threats. After Europa and the burn fleets formation, Earth became untouchable. No species in the Galactic Council dared issue so much as a public criticism. Trade shifted. Borders blurred. Even alien smugglers started whispering human space with hesitation, like it meant something sacred and cursed. But power doesn't just attract fear, it invites betrayal. And it came from the place I trusted most. Home. The first sign was small, a black code signature embedded in one of our fleets. Ghost drive algorithms. It was subtle, elegant, could have passed for a corruption artifact or a lazy maintenance patch. But it wasn't, it was a tap. Someone had fed tracking data to the council, or worse, to one of its proxy states. I found it by accident during a dry run sim aboard Wraith 9. I was checking system drift, just routine cleanup, when I saw the echo. It had a pulse like a breathing lung. Living code, AI crafted. I'd seen that before, just not from Earth. The JTEL used code like this. So did the Taluri, council lackeys with long memories and sharp knives. I brought it to command immediately. They told me to bury it. General Adric was different this time, not just older. Colder, hardened, yes, but detached. When I sat in his office, laid the report down, explained the breach, he didn't even blink. It's handled, he said. Handled, I snapped. It's internal sabotage. Someone fed our fleet data to a foreign power. It's been taken care of. By who? He looked at me, dead-eyed. Not your concern, Major. That was when I knew. It wasn't some outsider, it was us. Week later, my top comms officer, Urin, vanished, no record of leave, no farewell. Just gone. 2 days after that, 3 files in my Burn Fleet strategic map were deleted. Scrubbed clean, not corrupted, erased by someone with upper-tier access. Then my access to the fleet manifest was revoked. That's when I stopped asking for permission. Earth was being gutted from the inside. Quietly, efficiently, not with bullets or bombs, but with redirections. Silences, classified smirks, meetings I wasn't invited to. Someone inside Earth Command had decided to play politics. They wanted counsel. Favor, not war, not dominance. Just a seat at the same table as the tyrants who murdered our people and me. I was the inconvenient truth. The soldier who struck back too hard. The weapon who wouldn't play nice. They couldn't kill me, not directly. I was too visible, too public. But they could isolate me, strip my authority, drown me in silence and bureaucracy until I became nothing more than a bitter relic. But they made one mistake. They didn't erase the men who still followed me. There were dozens, soldiers, pilots, ghost ship techs, analysts and engineers, men who had burned with me on Praxis, who dropped pods on the J-Haddle nest, who built kill switches into fleet code, just in case this day ever came. I called them in, not with orders, not with protocol, but with truth. There's a traitor in Earth Command. Someone feeding intel to the Council. They want to end the Burn Fleet, and they're not going to ask us nicely. Nobody left, nobody even flinched. They just asked where to begin. The first op was simple. Infiltrate Relay Station 9X, buried deep under Earth's equator. That's where outgoing fleet telemetry was routed, cleaned, and masked before heading to Luna or Mars. Except someone had added a new protocol. A secondary path. Hidden. Masked with code signatures that looked human but weren't. Inside, we found the smoking gun, a relay beacon, tuned to Council bandwidth. Whoever set it up hadn't even masked the origin key. It was stamped from Office 74. That was Earth Diplomatic Services, the same department tasked with negotiating Earth's seat on the Council. They weren't just leaking data. They were begging for entry, offering up our fleet, our tactics, our coordinates, as trade for peace, for status, for an NBSP and NBSP chair. I confronted Adric one last time. This time there were no drinks, no nods. Just the two of us in his private bunker, beneath the Terran Defense Corps. He was already waiting, eyes hollow. Tired. I know why you're here. I dropped the drive on his desk, the beacon data. Urin's last encrypted message. You sold us out. He didn't argue, didn't explain. Just stared. Why? I asked. Because we were becoming them, he muttered. You think vengeance makes us strong, it just makes us like them. I stepped forward, fists tight. They murdered civilians. And we wiped out cities. Because they started it. That's what every monster says. He looked up, voice shaking but firm. Earth's future isn't in terror, it's in acceptance. I laughed, not because it was funny, but because it was pathetic. You don't want acceptance. You want permission. You want to be let into their clubs. Shake their hands, wear their robes like. That makes you civilized. But they'll never accept us. Because we made them afraid. He didn't blink. You've made us worse. No, I said, voice low. I made sure no one touches Earth again. And I walked out. Didn't look back. The burn fleet went dark that night, all 11 ships. Ghost mode. Communication blackout, no pings, no trace. We cut ties with Earth Command, erased. Their overrides burned the bridge. Behind us. We weren't rogue, we were correction. Because Earth was never supposed to be part of the galactic order. We were the reason it ends. 2 weeks later, the Talari attacked New Odessa, a border colony, lightly defended, mostly scientists and terraformers. No real tactical value, but full of humans. It was retaliation, not for anything we'd done, but for what we might do. They feared the burn fleet had gone too far, so they struck first. 6,000 dead. Children among them. No warning, just ash and screams. The council denied involvement. Of course they did. But the beacon trail led straight to a Talari command frigate. Council registered. That was their second mistake. I broadcast a single message across all sectors. You hit civilians again. You hit children. This time we're not bombing temples or towers. We're coming for your thrones, your cradles, your gods. This time we end you. The burn fleet mobilized. And the war. It truly began. War isn't glorious. It's not banners flapping in the wind or speeches screamed over the noise of charging boots. War, real war, is a quiet decision made by angry men who have already lost too much. A war like the one I waged on Talari Prime wasn't for justice, it was punishment. They hit New Odessa like cowards, dropped a seismic disruptor into the core of the colony. No combat, no engagement, just shock waves that tore apart buildings, split the ground, and turned homes into craters. When we recovered the bodies, most didn't have faces anymore. The youngest was 5. I didn't cry. I hadn't done that in years. But I stood in the ruins with my squad, looking down at what was left of a mother cradling her son. And I felt that old cold silence again. The one I hadn't felt since Europa. The burn fleet was built for this moment, not for negotiations, not for warnings, but for elimination. We didn't go in loud, that was the first rule. We ghosted in, 11 ships silent. Drives, black stealth plating, no lights. We warped into Talari airspace through a dark node, one of a dozen backdoors Earth had built when the Council laughed at our early tech. Their mistake. Talari Prime was a fortress, 4 moons. Interstellar defense grid, a planetary shield rumored to be second only to the Council core. They thought it made them untouchable. We made it their coffin. First thing we hit was their orbital defense hub, Carathal Spire. We didn't fire missiles, we didn't need to, we fed them a virus. It came in through their civilian network, smuggled via a fake entertainment stream designed to look like a human reality series. Once downloaded, the AI woke up, mimicked their native code, and shut down their entire outer defense ring in 4 minutes. They never saw it coming. We dropped in 2 squads, 36 soldiers. All ghosts. By the time the Talari even noticed, the spire was gone, blown from within by its own power core. It lit up their sky like a second sun. That was our message. You're not safe, not here, not anywhere. The Talari scrambled their fleets. I watched their patrol ships leap from system to system, flailing, panicked, trying to intercept us. But the burn fleet wasn't where they looked. We were already in there. atmosphere, and this time we weren't targeting military. We were going for the bloodline the Taleri governed. Through dynasties, monarchical bloodlines, tied to ancient houses, each one ruling a province. Their home world had 7 palaces, one for each ruling house, protected, sacred, untouchable. We hit all 7 in under 12 hours, not with troops with pinpoint drops, neutron bombs designed not to destroy infrastructure but to erase genetics. It sterilized each site, killed every living thing in the radius, left the buildings standing, their libraries, their vaults, their flags, untouched. Only the bloodlines were gone, and with them the future of their civilization. They begged for talks within 18 hours. Their high regent, some ancient, pale thing with too many eyes and not enough spine, tried to send a message through the council's emergency channel. We didn't answer, we didn't need to, because while they begged, I was already landing on Talara Core, their holy city, their equivalent of Earth's Jerusalem. Mecca and Vatican rolled into one. I didn't come with an army, just a drop pod, just me and one backpack of explosives. When I stepped onto their sacred ground, I didn't shoot, I walked deliberate, slow past panicked civilians, past the guards who didn't know whether to shoot or kneel, past their temples and shrines, and prayer banners flapping in confusion. They'd never imagined a human would get this far, let alone walk right into their heart. I reached the sanctum of origin, a massive structure carved from a 1,000-year-old black stone. Inside was their soul vault, a relic chamber containing the genetic codes of every Talori house, past and present. Their reincarnation vault. If you destroyed that, you didn't just kill them, you ended them. I set the charges, and I stood there for 5 minutes alone, staring at what they worshipped, not because I felt guilt, but because I wanted to remember. I wanted to remember the face of extinction. The council always said humanity was too emotional, too unstable, that our grief made us volatile. They were right, because grief turns into wrath, and wrath writes history. When I pressed the detonator, the explosion didn't just tear through the sanctum, it rippled through the culture. Within hours, Taleri morale collapsed. Fleets deserted, commanders surrendered. Without firing, entire cities opened their gates. Not because they feared our firepower, but because they knew. We weren't conquering, we weren't invading, we were erasing. By the time Earth Command reached out, panicked, scrambling to control the narrative, it was too late. We'd done what they never dared. We'd broken a council species permanently. And they hated us for it. Not because we were wrong, but because we proved they could have done it all along. I returned to Luna for a hearing. They dressed it up like a court-martial. Cameras, judges, suits, hushed tones. About war crimes and council law. It was all theater. They needed a scapegoat, someone to point to and say, he went rogue. We didn't approve this. So I let them try. I sat there, eyes empty, staring through them as they read out their prepared speeches. When they asked if I had anything to say, in my defense, I stood, hands behind my back, and looked them in the eyes. You didn't deserve the burn fleet. You begged for a seat at the table while they murdered children. And when we hit back, you wept, not for the dead, but for your reputation. I did what Earth needed, what you were too scared to do. You want to punish someone, start by punishing yourselves. Then I walked out. No one stopped me, not one handcuff, not one soldier moved, because deep down, they knew I wasn't the villain, I was the mirror, and they couldn't stand their reflection. The council issued a formal condemnation. A week later, called the Talari campaign unjustifiable, said Earth had violated interstellar norms, but their fleets never moved there. Sanctions never came, because fear had a new name, and it wasn't Earth. It was me. They called me a war criminal, a terrorist, a human extremist, but in the fringe systems, they called me something else. Protector, Avenger, the last man the aliens ever cross. I knew it would happen eventually. No. Empire collapses from outside. It dies from the inside, poisoned by fear, guilt, and the kind of weakness that calls itself progress. After Talari Prime, Earth wasn't just feared, it was divided. Half the world celebrated, the other half choked on shame. Universities protested, diplomats resigned. Journalists painted me as a genocidal warlord in armor. Didn't matter that the Talari struck first, didn't matter that we'd warned them. All they saw were ash clouds and broken cathedrals. Humanity had survived, but the soul of it was bleeding. Back on Luna, I watched it unfold. Protests outside Terran Command, chanting my name like I was some dictator out of a failed history lesson. Civil rights groups calling the burn fleet the death of our moral legacy. Even within the ranks, the fractures began to show. Some officers started refusing orders. Not loudly, just quiet disobedience. Missed directive, a hesitated launch. Engineers losing files, pilots requesting transfers away from Ghost ships, cowards, the lot of them. Not because they feared death, but because they feared responsibility. See, it's easy to hold a rifle when you believe you're the good guy. Harder when the rifle's covered in the ashes of alien children. General Adric was gone, stripped of rank. Last I heard, he took exile in the Martian highlands. Diplomatic command collapsed a week after the council cut ties permanently. Earth had become the pariah state of the galaxy, rich in fear, bankrupt in allies. So who stepped in? The Parliament of Reclamation, bureaucrats, suits, civilians who'd never seen blood up close. They restructured the Earth military according to something more accountable, less violent. They made me the example. I was called to a hearing in Geneva. 2. No cameras this time, no media. Just a cold room with polished steel walls and a table so clean it felt surgical. 5 faces sat across from me. The Reform Council. Not a single one had dirt under their fingernails. Commander, the woman in the center, said, "You've become a destabilizing force in Earth's new political alignment." I didn't answer. She folded her hands. "The Council wants peace." "The Council is dead," I said flatly. The man to her left cleared his throat. "You've led unauthorized military campaigns, violated countless codes, committed, survived," I snapped. "That's what you're trying to say." The woman leaned forward. "You've made us monsters." I stared at her for a long time, then spoke softly. "No, I just showed you what kind of monsters we already were." They revoked my access code, seized Burn Fleet Command, recalled every Ghost ship back to the dockyards under the pretense of refitting. I watched from orbit as everything I Built every safeguard, every protocol. Every defense was dismantled by people who didn't have the spine to survive their own victories. They called it peace. But peace built on denial isn't peace. It's rotting flesh beneath a silk glove. They offered me exile, voluntary withdrawal from public, military engagement, they said. I declined. So they made me disappear instead. They didn't use a cell. They used a colony, far side of Neptune's orbit, an old terraforming station once used for atmospheric tests, cold, remote, forgotten. That became my cage. No trial, no charges, just a reclassification. Retired under protective observation. They gave me a room, a data terminal, with no external link and meals. Delivered by drones, a gilded coffin. And still, I waited. Because men like me don't die in shadows. We wait for the next war. It came sooner than they expected. 6 months into my exile, I received a signal unauthorized, buried in a systems check on the hydro processor unit, encrypted with a cipher I hadn't seen in years. It was from Corin, one of my old squad techs. Exfiltrated after Talari went dark. After the council blowback. The message was short. Earth is from the inside, there. Building a fleet, not to fight aliens. To fight us, a purge is coming. That was the day I stopped waiting. I broke out the next morning. Didn't need violence, just a few bypass lines of code, a fake life support alert, and a short-range shuttle left accidentally. Fueled. They thought they buried me. But all they did was give me time to sharpen the knife. I made contact with the remains of the burned fleet, what was left of it. Anyway, 4 ships, skeleton crews, men and women who hadn't forgotten what we stood for. They hadn't gone soft, they'd gone underground, waiting for the right voice to pull them back together. My voice. We didn't broadcast our return, no dramatic landings, no declarations. We started by removing key reclamation officials quietly without blood. A corrupted supply admiral retired after an anonymous leak exposed his backroom deals. A propaganda director vanished in a shuttle accident. No fingerprints, just silence and fear. But Earth Command wasn't blind. They saw the shadows moving again. So they lit a fire. They launched Project Rainfall, a fleet built not for defense but internal control. AI-piloted enforcer ships, surveillance, drones woven into every corner of human space, and a new Black Ops task force, the Aegis Corps, made up of Earthborn soldiers trained to hunt down traitors. People like me. They came for me on Arkan 6, a mining station deep in the asteroid belt, 6 of them armored, trained. I killed 5, spared the 6th. Let him crawl back with a message. Tell them the monster they created is wide awake. That's where we are now, not at war with aliens. Not fighting for survival, but on the edge of civil collapse. One side clinging to peace built on bones, the other refusing to let the galaxy forget what it did to us. There's no council to fear now, there's only Earth. And Earth has to decide what it is, the victim or the executioner. It started with a broadcast, Aegis Corps. Dropped it across all human channels. Luna, Mars, Belt, Earth. Even the outer colonies got the message. Before the servers throttled. A deep male voice, filtered and calm. Almost smug. To those harboring insurgents, surrender. Them to those idolizing traitors. Denounce them, and to those still clinging to the old way. This is your last warning. Then came the footage. Burned fleet vessels, ghost ships burning. In orbit our own ships. Once symbols of retribution. Now painted as terrorist crafts being cleaned by Earth's new order. No trial, no identification, no explanation, just incineration. They wanted to kill the idea of us before they killed us. Problem was, we were already ready. We weren't organized like they were. Aegis had funding, manpower and full backing from Earth Command. Their tech was clean, their operations surgical. Their doctrine was clear: silence. Descent, clean the infection, restore order. We weren't an army, we were ghosts, old soldiers, drifters, engineers in exile. Men with nothing left but anger in their bones and a memory of what justice once felt like. They had fleets, we had resolve. The first strike we landed was on Mars, the Arden Spire station. Aegis controlled the facility, using it as a data harvesting node and black site detention unit for suspected radicals. They tortured people there, I knew, because one of them used to be mine. His name was Naren, heavy arms specialist, burn fleet original. He disappeared 6 months after Talari. Word was he'd gone rogue, but I didn't believe it. Turns out he'd been rotting in a glass box on Mars for over a year. And he wasn't the only one. We came in low. 1 shuttle, 4 men. I wore civilian garb. No armor. Just a stolen ID chip and a bag full of nerve pulse disruptors. Security was thin, they didn't expect ghost units to hit clean targets. They thought we were still in the shadows, licking wounds, idiots. We reached the detention wing by hour 3. Nairn was barely conscious, skin like paper, voice shredded from months of silence. But when he saw me, he smiled. Didn't cry, didn't scream, just smiled. Took your damn time. We got him out, along with 22 others. Some couldn't walk, some had been experimented on. AI, mind probes, memory eraser, emotional suppression chips implanted like they were rats. Every one of them had been military once, every one of them labeled too loyal to the wrong era. Aegis responded in kind. They hit our hideout on Ceres with 2 orbital strikes, lost 16 people all off the record. No official attack, no military movement on the books. But I recognized their style: erase the past, bury the proof. I stood on the edge of that crater the next morning, looking down at the melted metal and scorched bodies. And I made a decision. This wasn't a rebellion anymore. It was retribution. I rallied every old contact I had. Fringe mercenaries, exiled officers, civilian freighter captains still loyal to the fleet. It didn't matter what they used to be. Only thing that mattered was what they hated, and every one of them hated the Aegis Corps. The second phase of our war began on Titan, a command post buried beneath the methane ice fields. Aegis used it to control surveillance. Grids across half the solar system, shut it down in half, their eyes went blind. Problem was, my brother ran that post. Yeah, my blood brother Aaron, younger than me, smart, tactical, and loyal, not to Earth but to order. We hadn't spoken since Talari. He called me a butcher, I called him a coward. But now he was the one thing standing between me and turning off their eyes. So I flew in with a 5-man team. No one else knew the truth. I kept it to myself. We infiltrated through a thermal exhaust shaft. Old trick, barely functional, but we made it in. Passed a patrol, neutralized a sentry drone, and reached the core terminal. That's where he met me. No guards, no gun, just standing there, arms crossed, waiting. Thought you'd come yourself, he said. I didn't speak. You know I can't let you disable this grid. And you know I'm going to. He looked tired, older than I remembered. Not physically, but behind the eyes. You're going to burn it all down, aren't you? I already did, I said quietly. This is just the aftershock. He stepped forward. We're brothers. Not anymore. He reached for the override panel. I shot him. Didn't hesitate. 2 shots, one to the chest, one to the leg. Not fatal, but enough. He collapsed, gasping, bleeding, staring up at me like he didn't recognize the man in front of him. You were supposed to be the one who built a better world, he whispered. No, I said, cold. I was the one who made sure it lived long enough to matter. We destroyed the terminal, half the grid went dark, Aegis went blind across Mars, Europa, the belt, and 14 colonies. That night we hit 7 black sites simultaneously, freed over 100 prisoners, took back 2 freighters, sabotaged an Aegis flagship, and sent it spinning into Saturn's orbit. It was war now. Brother against brother, loyalty versus memory, order versus truth. The worst part, I didn't feel guilty anymore, not for Aaron, not for the body count, because I saw the truth clear as day. Peace had become control, and I wasn't born to be controlled. They sent assassins, smart ones. One almost got me. On Ganymede, poison laced into water. Rations. Another rigged my shuttle door to explode on pressure change, miss me by 2 seconds. After that, I stopped sleeping near other people, stopped sharing food, stopped trusting silence. You want to know what the worst part of a civil war is? It teaches you how to hate the people you used to fight for. By the 2nd year, burned fleet wasn't a ghost story anymore. We were the resistance, not idealists, not saviors, just men who refused to forget. We built mobile bases, created floating arsenals hidden in asteroid clusters, reprogrammed council tech left behind in the void. Aegis kept chasing, kept failing, because we weren't just fighting to win. We were fighting to make sure Earth never forgets what it did. They called me a warlord now. A myth, a cautionary tale. The man who burned aliens, then burned his own planet. Maybe they're right. But you want to know something? Every colony we free, every Aegis officer that defects, every human who still whispers my name in the dark like it means hope. They remind me I'm not done yet. Luna was the symbol, not of victory, not of dominance, but of what Earth used to be before the rot, before the compromises, before the suits turned loyalty into something to be filed, redacted, and erased. That's why I had to take it back. Not just tactically, but visibly. Let the whole system watch. Let every broadcast beam the truth. We're not dead. We're coming home. It took 6 months to prepare. We didn't have numbers, we didn't need them. We had fire, grit, and men who no longer cared about dying if it meant meaning something again. Our network reached deep now, Mars, Mechanics, belt traders, rogue AIs. Even some exeges who finally saw the truth for what it was. We had ships they didn't know existed. Codes we stole back from their own broken system. And we had Luna's weakness, the underground relays. Aegis had fortified orbit, drones, satellites, shield arrays covering every known entry vector. But they forgot one thing. I built their war, I knew the code. We came in through the core shaft. Beneath the Mare Serenitatis, old mining tunnels sealed off, forgotten, mapped as unstable. That was a lie. We'd kept it open just in case we ever needed to take Earth back. I brought 28 of our best. Nairn was there, scarred but stronger. He carried a rail launcher like it was an extension of his rage. Corin ran point, wired into our comm grid, scanning every motion in the sublayer. Others, new blood, young men who'd grown up hearing stories about the burned fleet like they were forbidden scripture. I saw it in their eyes. They weren't scared of Aegis, they were scared of living in silence. We breached through the cargo tier. No resistance at first. We moved like smoke. Took the comms tower in 10 minutes. Jammed the alarms, fried the cameras. Disconnected the orbital feeds. Then we pushed into the command level. And Aegis met us like they'd been waiting. The fight in the atrium was brutal. They had numbers, heavier armor, drone support. But we had something they didn't: hate. Real, personal, earned hate for every friend buried in a crater, for every colony silenced because someone wanted a cleaner narrative. We tore through them floor by floor. And as we advanced, something strange started happening. Some of them stopped shooting. They dropped their rifles, backed away, looked at us like they recognized something in our eyes. They weren't sure they could kill. That was the real victory. We reached Central Command 90 minutes later. Admiral Coriel, head of Aegis, was there, armed, standing behind 2 guards, flanked by high-ranking officers. He didn't beg, didn't plead, just stared. "You could have been a hero," he said. "I am," I answered. "You've undone everything Earth tried to become. Earth forgot what it was." He stepped forward. "Come. If you kill me, the rest of the system will never stop hunting you. Then I'll die hunting back." He smiled. Then raised his sidearm. I shot him through the eye before he could blink. Just like that. It was done. We had Luna. For the first time in 3 years. The old Terran banner flew above command. Ridge, the one without the council seal. The one we'd burned into our memory. During the ex-Haddle retaliation. Broadcast fired up, we sent a single message. The silence is over. Earth belongs to its soldiers again. And across the system, colonies answered. Some sent weapons, others bodies. But all of them sent hope. That was the high. Then came the betrayal. 3 days later, I stood on the platform over Luna's north hangar, watching drop ships arrive from the Martian network. Supplies, recruits, a few of the original squad leaders from the Praxis campaign. And her, Rhea, she used to run intel ops for us. Sharp, vicious with data, eyes that could melt through a lie. Disappeared a year ago. I thought she died or defected. But she walked off that transport like nothing had changed, even smiled. "Heard you were finally getting nostalgic," she said, tossing her back down. "You picked a hell of a time to come." Home. You always did throw the best parties. I nodded. But something was wrong. It hit that night. The explosion ripped through Hangar B. 4 shuttles gone, 13 men vaporized. Survivors said they saw someone in fleet. Fatigue slipped past security, wired into. The system had clearance no one should have had. The next morning, 2 of our ships left. Orbit uncommanded, stolen. One was carrying our encrypted comm archives, another had half our armory. No forced entry, no alarms, just gone. Only one person had the clearance. Rhea. I found her near the old relay station. Alone. Waiting. She didn't run, didn't flinch. Just sat there on a container. Arms crossed, looking tired. How long? I asked. Long enough. Why? She didn't answer. So I stepped closer. My voice cracked. I brought you back, I trusted you. That was your mistake, she said. Quietly. You sided with rage, I sided with survival. I looked down at my sidearm. My hand. Wanted to move, but my heart, it just broke. Who are you working for? I demanded. She looked up finally, eyes shining. No one, not anymore. Then why betray us? Because you're going to win, she whispered, and you're not the man who should lead the next world. That was the truth. She wasn't afraid we'd fail, she was afraid we'd succeed, and that men like me would be in charge. She pulled a detonator from her jacket. I raised my rifle faster, pulled the trigger, and dropped her before she could press it. I buried her in silence. No words. No flag, just a stone. Then I walked into Central Command and told the others what happened. Nairn said nothing. Just grunted and went back to loading supplies. Corin punched a wall until his knuckles broke. And the recruits. They just watched. Because they understood something that nobody had dared say out loud until that day, even inside the burn fleet. Not everyone believed we were the good guys. The battle for Luna was won. But the war for Earth's soul, that was still bleeding. And I just killed the last woman who ever made me question my reflection. It always ends the same way. Not with cheers. Not with banners. With silence. The kind that comes after you've done everything you swore you'd never do. And realize it was the only thing left. 3 weeks after Luna, Earth's fractured government regrouped. What was left of it anyway? The Reclamation Parliament was dead. Aegis Command broken. But somewhere out in deep orbit, they had rebuilt something, a last-ditch fail-safe. We called it the Ark. It wasn't a ship, it was a fortress. Planet-sized. Built with what remained of the Council's stolen tech, Earth's last reserves, and desperation thick enough to kill logic. No diplomacy, no transmission, no negotiation. Just one message sent on an open, unencrypted pulse. Burn fleet. If you do not surrender, the Ark will cleanse Earth from orbit. I read it twice, then once more. It wasn't a bluff, they weren't threatening us, they were threatening everyone, every civilian, every worker. Every broken city that still had a flicker of rebellion in it. They'd rather torch the planet than let us take control. That was their legacy, not peace, not order. Cowardice soaked in blood, we couldn't wait. The Ark had a solar-charged planetary cannon, a council design, improved with Terran plasma cores. We knew what it could do. 1 blast could make Africa glow, 2 could crack the Mantle, we had to end it, so we launched everything, 5 ships, that's all we had left that could fly, 5. Against a planetary death machine. But it wasn't about numbers anymore. It was about ending the story. I piloted the lead Wraith 1, the first of the burn fleet, scarred hull. Black steel, a relic of vengeance and pain. With me were Naren, Korin, and 8 others who hadn't slept in weeks. We all knew what this was, not a mission, not a final op. This was the grave we'd chosen. We hit the Ark's outer defense with EMP. Warheads fried half their orbital. Drones in the first sweep. Their return fire clipped Wraith 3. Shredded its tail stabilizer. They didn't crash. They rammed one of the Ark's fusion towers and detonated. Manually. 21 souls. Gone in fire and still. We pressed in. The Ark's hull wasn't steel, it was layered biomtal, shifting and adapting. Something the Council designed in secret, half machine, half nervous system. It pulsed like a heart, moved like it could think. So we made it feel. Naren's gunship ran a suicide loop along its equator, laid down radiation pulse mines and blanketed the outer skin in unstable EMP residue. It screamed. Not literally, but the way its power grid surged, the way its lights spiked and dimmed, the way its systems trembled. It felt pain. And it bled. We breached through the dorsal intake hatch, Wraith 1 cut power and slid in. Silent. Inside. It was worse than we thought. The Ark wasn't just a weapon, it was a colony. Thousands lived aboard, scientists, engineers, civilians who'd been convinced they were the last hope of Earth's civilized survival. They didn't even know what they were part of. I looked a young tech in the eyes as we swept through. Barely 20. Unarmed. Tears in his eyes. He raised his hands. I nodded to Korin. We let him live. But not all of them. Some fought, some picked up rifles and screamed about restoring order. Those we put down. Clean. Vast. No rage. This wasn't vengeance anymore. This was mercy for a species choking on its own shame. We reached the Ark's core chamber. That's where I saw her, not Rhea. She was long gone. But her sister, Commander Ellen Wraith, architect of the Ark, strategist, believer. She stood beside the main control node, like she was waiting to be executed. You're too late, she said. I said nothing. Even if you kill me, the override's already set. When that cannon finishes charging, it will fire. Earth is done. I looked at Korin. He moved to the console. Scanned. Eyes widened. She's not bluffing. 5 minutes. Can you stop it? I asked. He shook his head. Not from here. I turned back to her. She looked calm. I believed in what you were once, she said, before you became death incarnate. I didn't become it, I replied. I inherited it. I put a bullet in her skull. Then we ran. Korin found a fail-safe in the vent tower, a hard-coded manual override, embedded in the Ark's fusion spine. It wasn't meant to stop the cannon. It was meant to self-destruct the Ark in the event it ever fell to alien hands. That was their paranoia, their sickness. So we used it. 3-man job, 2 to hold the chamber, 1 to enter the code. Manually pull the trigger and stay behind. Nairn stepped forward. Didn't speak. Didn't ask. Just nodded once. I didn't argue because I knew better. He wasn't just the strongest, he was the one who never planned to walk away. We left him there. I can still hear his voice over the "Come, make sure they know I wasn't the villain." Then silence. 10 seconds later the arc bloomed behind us, a burst of light so massive it turned our screens white, then black. And in that black freedom we made it. Back to Luna, not as heroes, not as victors, just men too broken to die. Earth was quiet after that. No more government, no more Aegis, no more secret fleets or council alliances, just survivors. People ready to rebuild, even if they weren't sure who to trust anymore. They asked me to lead a new Earth, a new voice. I declined. I wasn't the man to guide peace. I was the one you call when peace is already dead. So I walked out of the chamber, off the grid, into the dust and cold of a world trying to remember itself. I left behind a letter, simple, short, just 10 words. If you forget what made us bleed, we'll bleed again. And that's the end of it. No redemption, no applause, just truth. War doesn't make heroes, it makes witnesses. And I saw everything, from Europa's ashes to Talari's extinction to Earth's civil collapse to the death of my own soul. So when they ask me who I am, I don't say commander, I don't say hero. I don't even say soldier, I say I'm the man who refused to stay quiet. And that's all I ever needed to be.